How's the royal family? I pray that everyone is doing well. Well, my royal family, we're going to get deep. I'm going to go deep today about the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And before I get real deep, I'm going to play this short video, very short, and then I'm going to play that short video again. Now, some of this stuff that I'm presenting to the royal family, many of y'all have seen it, but it's good sometimes to reflect and go back over things.
Wasserman Schultz, he never had a chance, and I was so surprised to see him sign on with the devil.
I think it could turn into a civil war because they're
really think that?
Absolutely. First of all,
That's how bad they are. They're the most evilest people I ever seen, lying tonight.
And the Bible says, if Satan cast out Satan, how then can their kingdom stand?
Let's leave it right there, my royal family. I've been talking about this quite frequently. Oops. Excuse me for that, my royal family. Again, I have been talking about this frequently, that the things that we are watching, the battle, the literally war that is going on between Esau and Esau, they are truly divided against themselves. And we literally, in real time, are watching America fall on the world stage. Trust and believe, there are countries around the world are captivated. Some are literally surprised, some are not. But it took a particular type to bring in that last piece that was greatly needed in order for the house to be divided against themselves. And the Democratic Party has always tried to give the royal family the illusion how greatly they care for us, not doing a damn thing for us, but literally expecting, with little or no effort, literally expecting our vote. And I've been saying that the Republican Party would be pandering to us, cash giveaways. And Trump and his folks know that they have to do something really drastic to capture our attention. So some folks would say, well, Truria, what does his impeachment and all of this have to do with us? It has a lot. I keep repeating myself. This is all about regaining, reclaiming our throne. In order to understand these things that we are seeing, you can't look at it the way the enemy look at it. You have to look at this stuff spiritual. I keep saying use your spiritual eyes and ears. And then the messages are quite resounding. Now, the Trump and the Democratic Party, they don't see any of that at all. It's all about jockeying for power. So I have a few videos that I'm going to share with the royal family. I have a little something I'm going to read from the Nation of Islam that Louis Farrakhan post in the Nation. And let's roll with it. Let's get into this first video from Democracy Now!
From both Democrats and, not only Republicans, but from what I can see from most Democrats as well.
Excuse me. Got to start at the beginning of this. I messed that up. Let's do a little refresher here. Okay, let's get this right. All righty, here we go.
Venezuelans. Joining us in the gallery is the true and legitimate president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido. Mr. President.
And President then pointed to Juan Guaido, who was in the gallery and stood up and got applause from both Democrats and, not only Republicans, but from what I can see from most Democrats as well.
That's right. There's Nancy Pelosi on the podium right behind Trump,
man.
who within minutes would be ripping up his speech.
What the hell? Family, forgive me. Y'all know I don't erase anything. Now, we're going to get started. I have to apologize again. Thank you for your patience.
This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Well, President Trump delivered his third State of the Union address Tuesday night, just a day before the Republican-controlled Senate is expected to vote to acquit him in the third presidential impeachment trial in U.S. history. Trump's speech sounded at times like a campaign rally, with Republican lawmakers chanting 4 more years. Trump focused much of his speech on the economy and immigration. He never once mentioned his impeachment trial.
And my fellow citizens, 3 years ago, we launched the Great American Comeback. Tonight, I stand before you to share the incredible results. Jobs are booming, incomes are soaring, poverty is plummeting, crime is falling, confidence is surging, and our country is thriving and highly respected again.
The night was filled with drama of a reality TV show. Prior to the speech, President Trump refused to shake House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's hand. Once his speech was over, Pelosi was seen on television ripping up her copy of the speech from the podium. She later called the speech a manifesto of mistruths. A number of Democrats walked out during Trump's address. Congressmember Rashida Tlaib walked out after Trump touted the appointment of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Ohio Congressmember Tim Ryan walked out, then tweeted, "I've had enough. It's like watching professional wrestling. It's all fake." Massachusetts Congressmember Seth Moulton and Bill Pascrell of New Jersey also walked out. A number of Democrats boycotted the night altogether, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, Maxine Waters of California, presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, Al Green of Texas, Bobby Rush of Illinois, Hank Johnson of Georgia, Steve Cohen of Tennessee, Earl Blumenauer of Oregon, and Frederica Wilson of Florida. None of them came.
During Trump's speech, the father of one of the victims of the mass shooting in Parkland, Florida, was thrown out after he shouted about his daughter Jamie's death. Fred Guttenberg was House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's guest at the State of the Union. He interrupted Trump's speech when Trump touted his pro-gun positions, and Melania Trump bestowed the Medal of Freedom on right-wing radio host Rush Limbaugh, who has spread racist conspiracy theories about former President Barack Obama, among other racist lies.
We're joined by 2 guests, Lee Fong, investigative journalist at The Intercept, still with us from San Francisco, and here in New York, the award-winning journalist Roberto Lovato, and the author of the forthcoming book, Unforgetting, a Memoir of Revolution and Redemption. Lee, let's start with you. Give us an overview of the State of the Union address and what exactly took place last night.
Well, look, the Constitution provides that the president is expected to correspond with Congress with his or her legislative priorities. Over the last 100 years, this has manifested in this State of the Union address before a joint session of Congress. And over the last decade or so, it's really become more of a partisan political theater. that's divorced from the actual legislative priorities of the president. It was clear from anyone watching this, this was a campaign rally speech. Trump previewing his election message for 2020, talking about the success of the economy, throwing red meat to his base on guns, abortion, talk radio, Rush Limbaugh. And, you know, I think there's an interesting dynamic here, too, in that it looked like Trump was pivoting back to his 2016 message, actually trying to co-opt Democrats by talking about how he would protect Social Security and Medicare, increase social spending, boost infrastructure spending, tackle drug prices. This is kind of unusual for a Republican in the modern era, but that was the campaign message that Trump ran on in 2016. Simultaneously, he painted a really lurid picture of immigrant crime, of terrorists murdering Americans, and the need for law enforcement and ICE to keep us safe. So he's simultaneously co-opting these core economic ideas from Democrats while pushing xenophobia and hate and demonizing immigrants, demonizing foreigners. This is the combination that we're seeing in the populist right all over the Western industrial world. This is the campaign message and strategy that Boris Johnson used in the December election in the UK. This is what the hard right and popular right has used in Poland and Hungary, co-opting the left on some core economic ideas while demonizing immigrants and boosting xenophobia.
Lee, let's go back to hear President Trump speaking last night.
After decades of flat and falling incomes, wages are rising fast, and wonderfully, they are rising fastest for low-income workers who have seen a 16% pay increase since my election. This is a blue-collar boom. Real median household income is now at the highest level ever recorded. Since my election, U.S. stock markets have soared 70%, adding more than $12 trillion to our nation's wealth, transcending anything anyone believed was possible. This is a record. It is something that every country in the world is looking up to. They admire.
That was President Trump talking about the economic accomplishments of his administration. Of course, Lee, in that when he mentions the 16% rise in the income of low-income workers, never mentions the fact that it's largely a result of a $15 an hour movement sweeping the country, having nothing to do with the administration, but actually with a popular movement that developed to raise wages. He also never mentioned perhaps the signature accomplishment of his administration, his tax reform, his tax bill. Wondering your sense on his speaking about his economic accomplishments.
Juan, that's an incredibly important point, and I think it implicitly shows the weakness of Trump's actual legislative accomplishment. His biggest legislative accomplishment by far was his tax cut bill. That's over $5 trillion over 10 years, weighted mostly to wealthy individuals and corporations, boosting the stock market as corporations use that extra cash to buy back their stock shares, enriching their investors. But, you know, for Trump, who's focusing on his reelection, I think he's implicitly acknowledging that his own base isn't happy with his biggest legislative accomplishment. He doesn't want to talk about all the trillions of dollars he's shifting upwards to CEOs and wealthy individuals. Instead, he's talking about kind of vague economic stats and again, pivoting to the red meat cultural conservative values.
Let's return to President Trump speaking last night.
From the instant I took office, I moved rapidly to revive the U.S. economy, slashing a record number of job-killing regulations, enacting historic and record-setting tax cuts, and fighting for fair and reciprocal trade agreements.
So, gutting regulations. Li Fang, you just did an incredible piece, The Playbook for Poisoning the Earth. Explain what you found.
Well, look, this investigation took us over a year. We have lots of exclusive emails and lobbying documents. But the kind of big picture view of this is that over the last 30 years, there's a new chemical compound, neonicotinoids. They're now the most widely used insecticide in the world, and they are increasingly blamed for insect extinctions, non-target insects all across the world. That's why we're seeing disappearing bumblebees and solitary bees, dragonflies and butterflies. And I know we don't have time to go deeply into this piece, but when Trump talks about cutting regulations, cutting red tape, just in the last week, his EPA rubber stamped the reapproval of these dangerous pesticides. Meanwhile, the EU is moving to ban them. This is the reason that we're seeing an ecological collapse in many areas, a loss of biodiversity across the country.
Well, Trump also had much to say about immigration. And I wanted to, let's see if we have that clip when he talks in his State of the Union.
If forcing American taxpayers to provide unlimited free health care to illegal aliens sounds fair to you, then stand with the radical left. But if you believe that we should defend American patients and American seniors, then stand with me and pass legislation to prohibit free government health care for illegal aliens. This will be a tremendous boon to our already very strongly guarded southern border, where, as we speak, a long, tall, and very powerful wall is being built. We have now completed over 100 miles and have over 500 miles fully completed in a very short period of time. Early next year, we will have substantially more than 500 miles completed.
That was President Trump last night. We're joined now by Roberto Lovato, award-winning journalist. Roberto, your take on the president's remarks last night about immigration, and also not only about immigration, but supposedly the huge crime wave that's occurring as a result of sanctuary cities permitting undocumented immigrants who were jailed by local from ICE detainers.
It's become predictable if you look at last year's State of the Union address. It's some of the same tropes, same criminals, same immigrants stealing jobs. I mean, this is tried and true for them, and the Republicans are going to use it because it works for them. And Trump is also playing to the fact that the Democrats don't really have much to offer on immigration. Nancy Pelosi may have ripped the speech, but they both draw from the same playbook on issues like immigration, foreign policy, corporate domination. And so Trump knows that. And something that was clear to me, for example, was that Trump didn't say anything about El Paso, right, where you had all these Latinos that were murdered, mass murdered, by a white killer who was inspired by Trump's rhetoric and that of the extreme right. And so you didn't have any of those victims in the audience. You know, you had other victims, and we're in a very dangerous time, and I think that immigration helps Trump get started, and he's going back to it because it works for him, and it puts the Democrats in the uncomfortable position, for example, of hiding the fact that when it comes to things like mass deportations, when it comes to things like caging children, when it comes to things like the separation of children from their mothers by the thousands. This was Barack Obama that started us on that path, not Donald Trump. And so, you know, you see it when in the Iowa in the Democratic debate, all the candidates run like rats when the lights go on. When it comes to Barack Obama, they don't want to touch him because people, especially in the Latino community, know we have the receipts of what happened with immigration and Obama. And so Trump knows this, and he's playing that card that shows him they have nothing to offer.
This whole issue, as he was talking about criminal aliens, all the studies show that people who are not native born are less likely to commit crimes, whether violent or not violent. And interestingly, as he touted the wall just a few weeks ago, newly installed panels from the U.S. border wall fell over. This was from California into Mexico 2 weeks ago because of high winds.
Yeah, the wall is symbolic not just of immigration. I think it's the closing of the U.S. mind. And that's the trap that I think the Democrats have fallen into. That they've played to anti-immigrant sentiment, except instead of saying racist tropes, they've said "si se puede." Right? They're at a material level, at the level of the immigrant body, the tortured, the starved, dehydrated, the dead child at the river and in the desert, there's not that much of a statistical difference between Obama and Trump. And so Trump's strategist knows what they're doing when they're deploying immigration as an electoral tactic and part of the core strategy.
President Trump also talked last night about Venezuela, a subject over which he hasn't been saying much in the last several months. But this is what he said last night.
Maduro is an illegitimate ruler, a tyrant who brutalizes his people, but Maduro's grip on tyranny will be smashed and broken. Here this evening is a very brave man who carries with him the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of all Venezuelans. Joining us in the gallery is the true and legitimate president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido. Mr. President.
And President then pointed to Juan Guaido, who was in the gallery and stood up and got applause from both Democrats and, not only Republicans, but from what I can see, from most Democrats as well.
That's right. There's Nancy Pelosi on the podium right behind Trump, who within minutes would be ripping up his speech, standing up and applauding.
This is why I started off my comments talking about the way that the Democrats use the same playbook as the Republicans at the core level of, say, foreign policy, militarism, and staging coups, and economic neoliberalism. There isn't that much of a great difference, which is what I think the Sanders threat brings to both parties, because the Democrats are in check. I mean, I look at the irregularities in, for example, in Iowa. I'm looking at a president who has been impeached, and I look at the appointment of a foreign leader by fiat, by tweet, and now by televised speech. It's hearkening back to kind of a digital age Latin American dictatorship. We're watching what I would call the Latino-Americanización of U.S. politics, when you have the division between rich and poor being so stark. And so Guaido's being there, it's just their continued efforts to prop up this failed most recent coup attempt that's been going on almost 20 years in Venezuela. I've been on the show here with both of you and talked about Leopoldo Lopez, who's really the gray eminence behind the throne of the Venezuelan right, of the extreme right. Because the Venezuelan opposition is vast, it's broad, and the U.S. and Elliot Abrams, who I know from El Salvador and his support for mass murders of children in places like El Mozote, is supporting the most extreme elements. And so you have here the introduction of Guaido to prop him up, but also, I think, to play against Bernie Sanders and the socialist team. You heard Trump referring to socialism. He repeated the term, just like he repeated the tropes of civilizational warfare. Civilization, even said the word barbarians. So you have terrorists, immigrants, criminals, all these code words, all this red meat, as Li Fang said, being used for the base. I mean, again, both Democrats and Republicans play to these themes in different ways, except that, for example, I mean, they both draw from a guy named Samuel Huntington, who brought us to the age of civilizational warfare as kind of the post-Cold War narrative of a United States in decline.
Also, Trump's mention of Guaido as a legitimate president of Venezuela, with 59 countries recognizing him, obscures the fact that there's over 100 countries that still recognize the current government of Venezuela.
Yeah, it's theater. It's all political theater at this point. It's a global political theater, and it's going to continue because the United States still has, after 20 years, failed to destabilize and it removed Venezuelan government.
And of course, you also have the complicity of the corporate media, the mainstream media. CNN, when Juan Guaido's wife came to Washington, had a meeting with Trump in the White House, the lower third, the description on CNN was the First Lady of Venezuela, Juan Guaido's wife.
It really is absurd. I mean, I was on your show some years back when Leopoldo Lopez in 2014 tried to stage a coup, and I brought up the fact that I had been, I received death threats with a gun included from allies of Guaido and Leopoldo Lopez, his mentor. And I got calls from a guy named Agent Mike Ranger, who sounded like Captain America, curious about the death threat, and yet I asked him, how do you know about this if I didn't report it to the authorities? He says, I'm not at liberty to tell you, sir. So these are really, I mean, it's a joke at one level, but if you're dealing with the extreme right, extremely violent, and I encourage people to just Google Juan Guaido and narco killers or narco murderers, and you'll see pictures of Juan Guaido at the Colombian-Venezuelan border with people that the Treasury Department has identified as hardened, mass-killing narco terrorists.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being with us and ask you to stay with us for our next segment. Award-winning journalist Roberto Lovato here in New York. And thanks so much to...
All right, my royal family. I know they went off into some other things, but I mainly wanted y'all to listen to their interpretation of Trump's speech. And it was pretty deep to me. So... the next thing we are going to get into before I play the bonus video is I have an article to read. I'm not going to read all of it because some of it, Farrakhan is speaking of the gun control and all of that. It's just specific things in this article that I'm going to read. So this was posted February 4th, 2020. At 11:17. Is it not ironic? So let me get the my other computer and I'll read this. It's pretty powerful to me. So let's see here. Get this right. Okay, here we go. Oh boy, it's always something. Okay. A nation on edge and running out of time. Oops, let me open this up a little bit more so I can see it and be legible for me. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? Matthew's 12:26, King James Version. America is now being torn to pieces politically, as Pharaoh political party was in the days when Jehovah went after the freedom of the children of Israel. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I'm repeating it again, if Satan cast out Satan, his house is divided against himself. How then shall his kingdom stand? And that video was done in November of 2016. With the Senate essentially exonerating the president, an important episode in American history doesn't end, but a new chapter is beginning. A brash president, not held accountable for anything. While even some supporters concede he did do wrong, isn't going to back down. Look for an emboldened President Donald Trump to keep doing what he's been doing, calling political opponents and fellow elected officials traitors, criminals, complaining that the press is the enemy of American people, and rallying against Barack Obama appointed judges who failed to do his bidding. Anti-Trump resistance is just as passionate and committed to pushing the liar in chief out of the White House. This is a time for intense division. No one seems to be able to offer a word or vision that make people believe a fractured America can come together. Those who love Donald Trump love him. Those who hate Mr. Trump hate him. Yeah, and I said that. I said it's extreme. I said either you extremely like him or you extremely hate him. Where is the middle ground in that quotation? There is none. It's division, discord, disbelief, disruption. When it came to removing Mr. Trump because he abused his powers by pushing the president of Ukraine to investigate the son of Joe Biden, a Democratic opponent, and withheld aid to the country to force Ukrainian compliance, the country was split. Majority of Americans voters believe that President Donald Trump abused his powers and obstructed Congress in the Ukraine scandal, but the public remains split largely among party lines over whether these actions justify his removal from office. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I'm going to skip that part and let me take it down to the bottom here. He gets into gun control. So the last phase of this. Okay. Language coming from the top of white society, political, social, media, and some religious leaders is fronting a showdown. War inside a country doesn't start with a shout. It begins with words, harsh words filled with vitality. Harsh words tied to the belief that the future of the nation is at stake. By the time the shooting war starts, the conflict has been well underway. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, patriarch of the Nation of Islam, and his servant, Minister Farrakhan, has warned America. Is a preserved area. No outside force will doom America, but the chastisement of God will bring down the most powerful country in the last 6,000 years, coupled with internal strife. America is at a dangerous point. A new election isn't going to fix her. Doing good by black people who God wants free, justified and equal, and heeding divine guidance from Minister Farrakhan could help America perhaps gain some time, but time is surely running out and the handwriting is on the wall. Okay. I'll try to remember to put that link in there so y'all could read that middle part, but it was mainly about, like I said, gun control. So, Trump is Trump is not graceful at all. We know this. And he loves to gloat, and he's very braggadocious. And there is nothing within him that is humble. And so this is how he chooses to respond to, for being, they saved his ass. The Republican Party saved his ass. So this is his narcissism that I'm going to show the royal family on Twitter. Cut this little music down a little bit and I'm going to hear that shit. So we got a Dora sample of his narcissism. Trump truly believes that he will forever, ever be king.
If we look at our president, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad writes to us that there's no such word in the Bible of president. All the rulers in the Bible are kings and rulers, not presidents. Though the president is in the scripture, not as a president. Now he has a little fever because he wants to be a king. And because he has a feeling that he is greater than a president, he does not desire to be bound by that which the founding fathers have set up to be a balance for the power of the executive branch of government. So he's interfering with those institutions, not in a mean-spirited way. He just feels that he could do better if he was the lawmaker, if he were the judge. Because if the judge doesn't judge according to the way he sees it, he'll take the judge on. If the Attorney General doesn't do what he thinks the head law officer in the country should do, he'll take him on. So the country is right now in great confusion, because the institutions of government that were set up by the founding fathers are now being challenged by a president who really wants to operate as a king. Wait. And some of us want to be dictators. We don't want any reign on our power. We would rather be the one to make all the decisions and force them on others that are under our authority. So that means that some of us want to be kings. So any structure that is set up to bridle the power of any office, if that office does not agree with us, there's a spirit to destroy it. So President Trump is literally destroying the republic that the founding fathers wanted to guide and gird it against what they suffered in Europe from kings. This president has seemed as the fake news group like to call him, he's a man that is unbridled. So they say he's unpresidential. So clashing is going on among those who are responsible for government. And this is happening in all organizations. You vote somebody in, and then they want to exceed the limits of what they are to function as. So you destroy organization. And then you run into something that tells you, I am unqualified to dictate. Then people start rising up against somebody who doesn't know their lane. Want to run in everybody else's lane. The nation is going to survive. I don't care what happens, the nation is going to survive. Because God has taken the point that if this is his, we function according to his will, or he allows things to come up that will curtail us. This is a tough time for tyrants. It's a tough time for dictators. It's a tough time for religious personages who have held sway. And they think that that is forever. Only God is forever. In the book of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king of Babylon, had a terrific dream one day. And a man that was in his kingdom named Belteshazzar was asked after the astrologers and all the magicians could not give him the meaning of his dream, like it was with the Pharaoh and Joseph, so it was with Nebuchadnezzar and Belteshazzar. The interesting thing about these scriptures and the Babylonian persecution of the children of Israel, corrupting them, taking away their names and religion, Nebuchadnezzar once had the heart of a human being. And the prophecy said that that heart of a human being would be taken out of him and he would have the heart of an actual beast. what that means to our president. But there's a heart there that in some cases is not a human. But the thing about Nebuchadnezzar was, the dream was that his nation or government was like a huge tree with branches and fruit, and God ordered it to be cut down just a stump and the root of it, and it was banded around by iron to keep it from growing. But under that condition of loss, Nebuchadnezzar's reasoning began to come back, and the heart of a beast was beginning to come out of him, and he became human again.
All right, my royal family. As we continue on, I felt like that was necessary for us to listen to. And Farrakhan had did that speech July 2019. So now we are at this present. And like I said in the beginning, Trump is not graceful. And he's going to continue to be more ridiculous. Now, what the Democratic Party is getting ready to experience is, how can I put it? Trump has a short attention span, and he's a person that you cannot ever satisfy. So they covered for his ass and risked their careers for his ass. So they expect something in return that they will not get. And his attention span is so, like, how could I put it? In a flash of a light, that maybe it'll last 2 weeks, or maybe just the rest of this week, that he don't give a damn if they did that. He expected them to do that. That's what they're supposed to do to him, because he think he's the king. In that he will be asking more of them. See, Trump, you got to realize this is a special human being, a subhuman, who has bailed out on everything. This is our father's project. It took a certain type that he put in place to tear this damn thing down. And we need 4 more years of it. So the Republican Party, you may not see it immediately, but they are in the same position as the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party ain't shit. All they have been doing is using us for the longest. And so the House is truly divided. And when it's divided, nobody can make no decisions. Everybody is pissed off with everybody. It's just, they're going for blood. It's an implosion within. I've said this before. And Trump will become even more demanding, more ridiculous, and all those things. And there will be a point in time, I don't know if we will see it now or if we will ever see it, that Trump is going to have an encounter, a deep encounter with Yahweh. I'm telling you something I know. I'm really telling y'all something I know. And I keep repeating this over and over. And if he is still in office and he has this encounter, we will all know based on his actions. But at this point, Trump has created so many enemies, they want his blood. He is a marked man globally. He is not even protected in this country either. So the book is open. We'll see how it plays out before our eyes. But he is very ungrateful. But the beautiful part about it, my royal family, is back here. Right back here. That I said I would play. If Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. And that is what's going on. America, again and again, will never, ever be the same. It took all of this because I didn't understand it at first fully when Farrakhan did this speech. This was before he became the president. But when it hit me, I put up the video and I pointed it out. Y'all could see it, and y'all even added to it. I appreciate it. So I'll leave it right there, my royal family. So let's bring this back to life. Listen to it one more time.
Wasserman Schultz, he never had a chance, and I was so surprised to see him sign on with the devil.
I think it could turn into a civil war because they're absolutely, first of all,
That's how bad they are. They're the most evilest people I ever seen, lying tonight.
And the Bible says, if Satan cast out Satan, how then can their kingdom stand?
So, my royal family, render your voice with your beautiful divine words. And as always, my royal family, I thank you for your love. I thank you for your support. And with that said, Ashe.